Hello quilters, I'm Judith and this video is for you who are new to free motion quilting. My goal is to help you understand the basics so that you will feel confident when you start on your own. Remember though that FMQ has a learning curve, but I believe anyone could learn it as long as you're willing to practice, fail many times, but still get back to stitching. For beginners, I picked 5 FMQ designs that I believe are easy to manage while building up the skill set needed to learn more advanced patterns. Today, we're diving into the first design, which is Sine Waves. I will break down the process, including troubleshooting, so stick around until the end. Okay, first, let's prepare the quilt sandwich. I drew straight lines using an erasable marker pen on the quilt to help us on our spacing and direction while quilting. The lines are 2 inches apart, which is the width of this ruler. And for this video, I created a drawing worksheet to help you practice the patterns. You could download this for free on my website. Simply check the description of this video. Now let's move to the sewing machine. First, I want to change the needle to a bigger size than I would normally use for a number 60 weight thread. I will use a number 14 needle as it will give an extra space to the thread so that it could move freely while quilting. By the way, I want to emphasize here that any sewing machine can be used for free motion quilting as long as the feed dog can be disengaged or lowered down from the needle plate. Of course, it should have a darning foot like this, but yours may look different like an open toe foot. But don't worry, it would work the same. The feed dog is this metal teeth here, and I already lowered it down by sliding this hidden knob here under the bed of my machine. Yours might be on a different location, but just look for these zigzag icons. Now that I am threading the needle, I make sure that the thread is not twisted or wrapping around the needle itself and should pass through the front side of the hole going to the back. Next, I will adjust the speed of my needle into a medium setting. This is crucial in free motion quilting as you need to synchronize your hand movement while sliding the quilt under the needle to create the stitches. I also set the stitch length to 0. And for the tension adjustment dial of the upper thread, I'm going to set it to its default setting. Later, I will show you how to adjust it based on the condition of the stitches. Then I prepare my quilting gloves, which is a must for me in order to have a firm grip of the quilt while quilting. Now it's time to load the quilt onto the machine. And it's very important here to consider the bulk of the quilt and the direction of its movement, considering the limited trough space of the sewing machine. For me, as much as possible, I start from the left side, going to the right, so that the bulk of the quilt is going out. And I got this extra space of my table here to hold bigger quilts. I also have my drawing worksheet on my line of sight so I could look at it from time to time if needed. Since I am going to start quilting from the left side, I'm rolling the quilt on the right side. By the way, the size of my quilt sandwich is 50 centimeters square, which is approximately a quarter yard square. I like to practice on this size to mimic the actual quilt condition. And before we do free motion quilting, let's practice drawing the sine wave pattern on paper. This is an essential step to get familiarized with the movement of the pattern, especially if it's your first time to do the design. This would eliminate second guessing the quilting path and direction while quilting. Besides improving muscle memory, it also serves as a roadmap of what we're trying to achieve. So please don't skip this process. You could also practice changing the density of the pattern by playing around with the spacing. I recommend this as your first pattern so you would learn how to move vertically in a consistent way while advancing the pattern horizontally. Now we're ready to do free motion quilting. First, let's bring up the bobbin thread by changing the needle position by going down then up until it catches the lower thread. Simply pull the quilt gently to access the threads and pull with your hands or tweezers if you have one. Take your time here to relax your body while doing this slowly. I know from experience that if it's your first time, you'll get really tense, and it's natural. Breathe slowly and encourage yourself that you could do this. Honestly, what really helped me learn FMQ faster on my own is a positive mindset. If I could do this, for sure you can. Now I'm putting on my quilting gloves and placing my right foot on the pedal of the machine. I'm adjusting my body position until I feel comfortable and no rushing here. I let my energy flows into my hands while feeling the other senses come together so I'll be on my concentration mode. Don't forget to lower the darning foot before starting. Then I press the pedal to start stitching. I'm starting in the bottom, going up, just as I was drawing on paper. Here, I'm listening closely to the sound of the machine while adjusting the speed of my hand movements. I'm looking at the length of my stitches to see if I need to get slower or faster. When I reach the top, I sway a little to the left, then go down. My eyes are not really on the needle, but a little ahead of it, just like driving a car or a bicycle. I am using a yellow thread here to create a good contrast with the fabric so you could see the stitches better on this video. But if this is an actual quilt, I would actually use a pink thread to make it blend with the fabric. And before I proceed, I want to check the condition of my stitches for any abnormalities like skip stitches and eyelashing since I changed the needle. And so far it's looking good, so I don't need to change the tension setting. So testing the stitches before quilting on an actual quilt is very important. Sometimes the upper stitches looks great while the bottom or bobbin thread is problematic, so make sure to check both. I stopped here because the quilt couldn't pass smoothly under the darning foot. It means the darning foot is putting too much pressure on the quilt. So I will adjust the height of the foot using this set screw here. I'll make this higher until there's a small gap between the foot and the quilt. In that way, I could move freely in any direction. Here, what I'm trying to show you is the movement of my hands, how I hold the quilt, and when do I stop to adjust the position of my hands. For me, having a good grip of the quilt allows me to have better control of my movements. I also press the foot controller in full so that the speed of the machine is constant. And I don't worry about direction either because of the guidelines that I have already drawn. And for spacing, I use the darning foot as a reference guide. And since this pattern is repetitive and I know my direction, my mind can focus well on my hand movements, giving me more consistent lines. But if this is your first time, don't worry too much about wobbles or spacing as long as you're progressing to the right. I also stopped to adjust the speed of the sewing machine as I felt it was too fast. A slower speed is much better if you're just starting out. The most important point here is to learn how to move your hands in synchrony with the speed of the needle. I also play with the density of the stitches to show you loose quilting versus dense quilting. Once you feel you have better control of the quilt and able to get good rhythm, you could switch to horizontal movements. You will feel the shift of the quilt's weight with the new movements of your hands. Again, you could adjust the spacing of the patterns. I also take a pause whenever I feel I needed to adjust the position of my hands or the quilt sandwich. For this video, I'm showing you my normal speed so you could see the actual process. Now let's check the stitches of our sine wave pattern. You could see here that the stitch length changes from smaller length to bigger ones as I progress. It means my speed of moving the quilt changes while I was quilting. You couldn't see it on camera, but I was actually adjusting my own speed to get in sync with the sewing machine until I find a good rhythm. And for the back side, we have some eyelashing on the horizontal waves. This means that the tension of the upper thread changes as I shifted my direction. And with eyelashing, the upper thread is actually pulled towards the back, which means the tension was too loose. What I can do here is to adjust the tensile dial setting to the left or positive side to tighten the upper thread. And as I inspect the vertical waves, there were actually symptoms of eyelashing already, but it got worse when I shifted to horizontal. So the first horizontal wave is the original condition, while the second is where I change the tension dial into +1. Both upper stitches almost looks the same, but if you check the lower stitches, you'll see the big difference. Eyelashing actually means loose upper thread tension. By simply tightening it solves the problem. And although in some cases there might be other causes, but for my machine, this is how I troubleshoot this. While for skip stitches, I normally change the needle and the problem goes away. Alright, I hope you learned a lot from this video, and if this is helpful, please share this with a quilting friend. I will be uploading the next designs, so make sure to check part 2 of this video. If you have questions, write them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. You can find me anywhere in social media as Dream Quilts, and I'll see you around. Thank you so much for watching and have fun quilting. Bye!